Welcome back to Shadowy Stories. I could feel the weight of the earth above me. My watch told me I'd been underground for nearly 5 kilometers, but deep in the mine, my sense of time and distance had become distorted. The air vibrated with the roar of machinery, the muffled conversations of my colleagues, and the rhythmic clang of pickaxes against rock. My name is Benjamin, and I'm a geologist with years of experience under my belt. I'm the lead mineral analyst and recorder for this company. My pronouncements dictate whether what the miners unearth is treasure or trash. I remember my first day on the job, the vast tunnels feeling like an endless labyrinth now. After countless surveys, I knew these tunnels like the lines on my hand. Familiarity, however, didn't breed complacency. Every miner knows that each meter gain presents new potential dangers and uncertainties. Today, I'd just finished inspecting a newly excavated area. A knot of anxiety tightened in my gut. We'd been at this site for 6 months with minimal returns. Investors were getting restless, and the pressure was mounting on the team. But that's mining days, even months of labor for one breakthrough moment. A beam of yellow light cut through the gloom. Marcus, his helmet lamp bobbing, approached me. "What do you think of this?" he asked, holding out a rock. I took it, examining it closely. "Promising, but we'll need to go deeper for a definitive answer." Marcus nodded and returned to work. The deeper we ventured, the colder it became as the air grew thicker, as though the weight of the earth was pressing down on us. The familiar grayish-brown walls of the mine began to change. Different minerals clustered together, forming intricate, vein patterns. After a while, our foreman, Oliver, signaled for the miners to take a break. Oliver was a good friend. Years ago he'd fallen on hard times, and I'd helped him out financially, later landing him this job. He was a solid guy. Our headlamps converged in a small chamber, creating a pool of light. Glow sticks and water bottles were passed around, and the cavern filled with hushed conversations. Emily, a newer member of the team but highly skilled, was examining the cavern walls. She traced a vein of minerals with her hand. How did this get here?" Intrigued, I leaned in closer. The vein shimmered faintly, reflecting the light in a strange way. It wasn't gold, nor anything we'd encountered before. Possibly a new mineral. Marcus nudged me playfully with his elbow. "Scrape some of that stuff and bag it. We might just discover something new and retire early." I chuckled and told him to store the sample. After the break, we continued our descent. The unusual mineral vein became more prominent, guiding our path like the markings of some ancient creature. Hours seemed to pass suddenly. A loud grinding sound echoed through the tunnels, followed by the roar of the drilling machine. Instinctively, I looked up, searching for the source of the commotion. "Shut it down. Shut it down." Oliver's voice boomed through the cavern. I rushed forward, pushing through the gathering workers. Our heavy-duty drilling machine had broken through a section of the rock face, creating an opening. Dust billowed from the gap, making it difficult to see. Marcus, who had been operating the machine, climbed down from the driver's seat, a look of concern etched on his face. "I didn't expect it to give way like that," he said. Emily cautiously approached the newly formed opening. "Look at this," she said, her voice a mix of wonder and apprehension, directing her helmet lamp into the void. Beyond lay an expanse of darkness. We had inadvertently stumbled upon an unknown natural cavern. Marcus gave me a beckoning signal. I nodded, took a deep breath, and steadied myself, peering into the darkness. The cavern was breathtakingly vast and frigid. The air, though cool, was surprisingly humid. Each breath brought not only the scent of damp earth, but also a peculiar, almost metallic, musky odor. The cavern floor was uneven, like ancient coins worn smooth by rainwater, a mix of jagged rock formations and smoother areas, hinting at the presence of water. Patches of moss and other vegetation clung to the floor. I stumbled slightly on a patch of moss, forcing me to adjust my footing. That's when I noticed the stalactites hanging above like chandeliers. Droplets of water clung to their tips, reflecting the light from our headlamps and casting dancing shadows on the cavern walls. Further in, stalagmites rose from the ground, some sharp, some rounded, like massive pillars holding up the cavern ceiling. In some areas, mineral deposits shimmered on the walls, displaying hues of blue, silver, and green. Water dripped rhythmically from above. The place was like something out of a dream. "Wow," Emily breathed. I nodded in agreement. This place seemed untouched, as if we were the first humans to ever set foot inside. But as we ventured deeper, a subtle tension permeated the air. We huddled closer, each turn revealing new wonders, different types of ore, underground streams running with almost crystalline water. Suddenly, and without warning, Emily stopped, causing a chain reaction of bumping backs as everyone behind her collided. "Look," she whispered, her voice slightly higher pitched than normal. She pointed toward the ground ahead. I followed her finger and saw them. Footprints, but these were no ordinary footprints. They were enormous, twice the length and width of a human foot, with elongated toes and what appeared to be long claws. I'd never seen anything like them, human or animal. The heels of the prints were deeply embedded in the earth, suggesting considerable weight. Marcus placed his hand beside one of the prints, measuring it against his own. His expression incredulous. Oliver, his face grim, inspected them as well. The prints continued into the darkness. Emily stared at the tracks. "Whatever made those, we need to be careful. Those prints serve as a stark reminder of the need for caution when exploring the unknown." But the thrill of the unknown propelled us further into the cavern. With each step, the sense of being watched intensified. The cavern was a labyrinth of vast chambers, some so large we couldn't see the ceiling, and narrow tunnels that forced us to proceed single file. In one such chamber, we discovered an underground lake. Its water was clear and still, reflecting the stalactites above like a mirror. Small, shimmering fish darted through the water, seemingly oblivious to our presence. I leaned down and touched the icy surface. "We should test this water for potability," Emily said, collecting a sample. Marcus nodded, pointing towards the edge of the lake. "Benjamin, there are some crystals exposed near the water's edge, not ordinary quartz. They seem to glow with a soft blue light." Murmurs of our rippled through the group. I cautiously approached, speculating that the glow might be bioluminescent bacteria. We pressed onward. In another chamber, we stumbled upon what appeared to be primitive cave paintings on the walls. The images were faded, depicting figures hunting and dancing around fires. Strangely, one painting portrayed a creature much larger than the humans, possibly the source of the footprints we'd seen earlier. "I guess these paintings are thousands of years old," Marcus said, running his hand over the surface. Intrigued, we began documenting the paintings. We speculated the people who once inhabited or visited this cave either revered or feared this creature. One painting showed figures seemingly offering gifts to a large, shadowy figure here. Within the earth, we had stumbled upon the secrets of nature and an ancient civilization. But as we made more discoveries, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Marcus broke the silence. "We should mark our way back, just in case our equipment fails." We agreed to use the glowing crystals as markers, fueled by the excitement of discovery and the underlying tension of the unknown. We pressed on, the cavern's secrets now intertwined with a sense of foreboding. By my rough estimate, we had been exploring for hours. Suddenly, a sharp clang echoed through the vast chamber. I turned to see Emily, her face pale, her percasse clawing at her feet. The cavern amplified the sound, making it seem like a thunderclap. Before I could ask Emily what she'd seen or heard, a deep growl emanated from the depths of the cavern. A heavy, tense silence fell over the group. We held our breath, exchanging brief glances without a word. We began to retreat. The uneven terrain slowed our progress. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, its rhythm mirroring the increasingly loud thudding sounds that were drawing closer. And then, it appeared in the beam of our headlamps. The creature was massive, easily twice the height of a human. It had elongated limbs, each ending in long, claw-like fingers and toes. Its skin was a pale gray, with faint blue-purple veins visible beneath. Two large eyes dominated its face, lacking pupils, just milky white orbs. I surmised they were vestigial, the result of generations spent in the lightless cavern, preventing any reflective glint that might betray its presence in the darkness. Its ears protruded outward and slightly upward, twitching occasionally. The sparse hair on its body vibrated with each breath, suggesting a keen sense of perception, likely used for hunting. Below the blind eyes were its nostrils, actually to slits that flared occasionally. Its mouth was filled with rows of sharp, yellow teeth, some protruding even when its jaw was closed. The creature was hunched over, its musculature thick and reptilian, everything about its creamed apex predator. And we were the prey. With a guttural roar, the creature lunged. Every muscle in my body tensed. Marcus, unfortunately, was close as though was trying to help Emily to her feet when the creature's massive hand wrapped around him. Its claws piercing his body, it lifted him effortlessly into the air. Marcus screamed in agony, struggling briefly before going limp. We watched in horror. I yelled, grabbing a rock and hurling it at the creature, hoping to distract it. The rock struck its head with a thud. Instead of flinching, it let out an uplifting roar. I shouted, "Run!" We scattered, fleeing in the opposite direction. Fear and the instinct to survive propelled us through the winding tunnels. We reached a relatively secluded chamber. The group in disarray, the shadows from our headlamps danced wildly on the walls. Then, an eerie silence descended. Huddled together, we could hear only our own ragged breaths. The creature's roars echoed through the cavern. Emily trembled, tears streaking the dirt on her face. She covered her mouth tightly, trying to stifle her breathing. I placed a hand on her shoulder, offering what little comfort I could. After a moment, Oliver, our foreman, spoke in a hushed tone. "I don't think it can see. Its eyes are all white, and it didn't react to our headlamps. That's the sound that attracted it. We need to be quiet. It's probably tracking us by sound." I slowly guided the group forward, avoiding loose rocks and scree. We moved cautiously, pausing frequently as I pressed my ear against the cool rock walls, holding my breath, listening intently. I found myself hyper-aware of every subtle sound: the gentle dripping of water, the faint rustle of bat wings overhead, even the scurrying of unseen creatures beneath our feet. The oppressive atmosphere of the cavern heightened my senses to a painful degree. We reached a narrow passage, barely wide enough for one person to pass through. We moved in single file, shuffling sideways. Inching our way forward, beyond the passage lay another small chamber. The air damp and cold water dripped rhythmically from the stalactites. We gathered in a relatively flat area, and Emily began sketching on the floor with a piece of chalk from her pocket, outlining the sections of the cavern we had traversed so far. Oliver pulled a small, battery-powered drill from his pack, pointed to a distant point on the sketch, and whispered, "If we can make a noise over there, we might be able to lure it away and give us time to reach the entrance." It was a risky plan, potentially disastrous if discovered, but we had few options. We need to make sure the sound lasts long enough and is loud enough to grab its attention, I said. Oliver pulled a timer from his pack. "This can also emit sound," he said, attaching it to the drill, rigging it to activate after a delay. We had to move quickly. Oliver said the plan was simple but relied on speed, timing, and a little luck. Just as we were about to set the plan in motion, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the distance. Oliver fumbled nervously with the drill, just as it slipped from his grasp. Emily caught it, and we all breathed a collective sigh of relief. Once the drill was set, Oliver signaled for us to move away from its location. We planned to wait in a side chamber while the creature was distracted, and then make our escape. Minutes ticked by, the tension stretching to a near breaking point. Then, the silence shattered. The drill's high-pitched whine pierced the air. Echoing intensely, the cavern seemed to amplify the sound, creating a cacophony of noise that reverberated through the vast space. Soon, we heard the creature's roars and the thudding of its feet. I could sense its rage and confusion, its keen ears drawn to the mechanical shriek. It thought it had found its prey as it ran past our hiding spot, continuing towards the drill. Oliver urgently motioned for us to move. I didn't think, just followed the others, the terrain treacherous underfoot. Our headlamps bobbed erratically in the darkness. We stumbled through the winding tunnels. Rounding a corner, we stopped dead in our tracks. A dead end. We had taken a wrong turn. The claustrophobic panic of being trapped underground surged through me. I didn't blame Oliver. It was pitch black, and under pressure, it was easy to become disoriented as the whirring of the drill grew fainter in the distance. A sense of urgency replaced the initial shock. We couldn't stop, no matter which way we turned. Oliver scanned the area, trying to find an alternate route, but in this vast, complex network of tunnels, we had lost our bearings. The echo of the drill faded, and silence returned, amplifying every subtle sound. We retreated to the previous intersection. Emily pointed to a tunnel on the left. Didn't we come this way? I couldn't recall. We turned right at the third intersection, I said. Maybe turning left will lead us to the exit if it's the way we came. We should find our crystal markers after a while. We don't have many other options. We followed Oliver cautiously into the new tunnel. Staying close together, Emily pointed out that the tunnel seemed to be sloping slightly upwards. A potentially good sign. Suddenly, Oliver signaled for us to stop. A faint, rhythmic sound emanated from ahead. A slow drip. We moved closer and saw water dripping from above. Water could mean a way to the surface, I said, my voice a mix of hope and caution. Oliver nodded. Or at least a connection to another tunnel system. Let us keep moving. As he spoke, a distant but distinct roar broke the silence. Echoing through the cavern, we knew it was coming, and judging by the sound, it was closing in fast. A surge of adrenaline propelled us through the narrow passage, but time slipped through our fingers and as the sounds grew closer, the scraping of claws against rock, my breath hitched in my throat. Suddenly, Oliver stopped and turned to me. Dr. Benjamin, all distracted. What are you doing? Oliver, someone has to thank you for pulling me out of the gutter all those years ago, Doc. Emily started to cry. She couldn't bear to lose another companion. Oliver pulled a hand crank flashlight from his bag. As he turned the crank, the flashlight would make a noise and emit light. I wanted to stop him, but cowardice held me back. What else could we do? Should I go? I couldn't bear to think about it, to confront that darkness within myself. I watched as Oliver disappeared into the darkness. I knew I owed him a debt I could never repay. We couldn't waste the time Oliver had bought us. We pressed on, searching for the glowing crystal markers. This tunnel seemed to lead downwards. After a while, we heard the faint sound of rushing water. We quickened our pace. Ahead lay an underground river, flowing at a surprising speed. We exchanged worried glances. On the one hand, the river could help us move quickly through the cavern. On the other, the sound of the water might attract the creature, and it would also mask the sound of its approach. We fashioned a makeshift guide rope from rope in our packs and, half submerged, followed the current. The roar of the water was both comforting and terrifying. Around a bend, we found an opening in the side of the cavern. We climbed up to take a brief rest and gather our thoughts. The river sloped steeply from this point, making it impossible to continue following the current. The creature's roars echoed again, distant now, muffled by several layers of rock. But in this labyrinthine cavern, we couldn't be sure there wasn't a shortcut that would allow it to quickly reach us. Emily looked at me. I knew she was thinking about Oliver, about his likely sacrifice. I urged the others to move. We followed the opening, and soon, we were faced with another intersection. This time, I chose the larger tunnel on the right, reasoning that the tunnels we had used earlier were relatively wide. We walked for a while longer when Emily let out a gasp of excitement, pointing ahead in the distance. A faint glimmer pulsed in the darkness. A crystal. A ripple of excitement ran through the group. I frantically signaled for them to be quiet. We approached cautiously and confirmed it was one of the blue crystals. We had our bearings again. We continued, scanning for the crystals, afraid to miss any glimmering object. Since we had placed the crystals at intervals, they weren't continuous, and we occasionally took wrong turns. But now we had a means of correcting our course. We felt ourselves getting closer to the entrance, and my anxiety increased at the same time. The creature's footsteps became more distinct. Panic seized the group. I could tell they wanted to make a run for it, to sprint to the exit. I stopped them, telling them we couldn't outrun it. I pointed to a recessed area in the cavern wall. We huddled in there. The creature was close now. I could smell its distinctive, musky odor. We were right next to it. The recessed area resembled an alcove, and we were like statues placed within, motionless. I prayed it wouldn't head towards the crystals, towards our escape route. The creature's head twitched, as if sensing its surroundings. Finally, it moved towards the underground river, We breathed a collective sigh of relief we didn't linger. We continued, following the glowing crystals, our hearts pounding after another 2 minutes. I noticed a subtle difference in the texture of the ground. I looked ahead. Discarded helmets and mining tools lay scattered ahead. Hope surged within me. We moved cautiously, our hearts pounding. Emily nudged me, pointing to the familiar intersecting mineral veins on the cavern walls. I knew what she meant. We walked faster, then faster still, abandoning any pretense of silence. Ahead, a faint light appeared, not the glow of crystals, but the artificial light of electric lamps attached to the cavern walls. We couldn't contain ourselves any longer and broke into a run. Finally, the familiar sight of the drilling machine came into view. The entrance was clearly visible. We were back in familiar territory. I found myself strangely nostalgic for the damp, musty smell of the mine. I glanced back at the darkness, as if it had all been a dream. Even back in the relative safety of the mine, we didn't slow down, rushing towards the true exit. Only when we reached the surface did I truly feel safe. Months have passed since our ordeal in the cavern, but the memory remains vivid, as if it were only hours ago. Every shadow in that dimly lit abyss, every unexpected noise in the suffocating silence. The company sealed the opening and contacted the authorities. I don't know what happened after that, only that a sign was erected, forbidding entry. So that's the story, at least now. No one else will stumble into that abyss like we did. I leaned against the bar, recounting the tale to a fellow caver, slightly embellished by the alcohol. So you really saw that monster? Of course, Dante, you believe me. I bragged a little. I believe you, just Dante go thinking about going back in there. I'm telling you, that cave is seriously creepy. Yeah, of course. I mean, I would never go back there.